Morning, everyone. Welcome to the Contemporary Issues class, and thank you for being such a big crowd today. We are pleased to have you here.
Wait a minute, you thank us for being big?
It's for our speaker and our topic today, I am sure. Yes, well, I'm Steve. I'm the leader of the class, and I want to welcome first timers. Let's see, we have some first timers. We won't embarrass you, but we want to welcome you to class today. So thank you for coming. I hope you'll come back. In our class here, we talk about usually social issues from a Christian perspective. And we are glad today to have Christine Little, one of our class members, going to present on immigration history in America. And so we're not today going to delve into all the things going on today with the government and our policy on immigration and deportation, but I'm going to set the stage for that. We will do that as a next follow-up on this issue, but Christine is going to tell us about some of the history, which will also be relevant to today, obviously. And so Christine is a retired high school teacher from Arapahoe High School. What topics did you teach? I forgot, Christine.
AP Psychology, World Geography, and Civilizations.
Geography and Civilizations, very good.
And human
Okay,
behavior.
and human behavior works into everything,
Yeah.
yes. Okay, well, before we do that, I want to welcome our Zoomers also and say, please mute yourself in the lower left corner of your screen when you're not speaking. And we are recording this for future playback on YouTube for those who can't be with us today. And Christine will take comments and questions during her presentation, her slideshow, but we need to keep it moving along quickly. So please keep your comments brief and be respectful. And as usual, please no attacking any particular politicians or policies with too much fervor in our discussion today. And also with that, we have a Sunday school class party a week from tonight, summer party at Ron and Alice's house, of course.
As of right now, there are 54 people signed up. So we're gonna have to squish, and I have chairs for about 35. So when you come, if you can bring a folding table and or chairs, I really would appreciate it. Or we can put blankets on the ground. If you still wanna come, I have a sign up sheet here for food and, if you bring a table and or chairs, I'd like to know. So otherwise it's gonna be really cramped, but that's a good thing. You have all these people wanting to get together and socialize, and so often we come in here and sit down. And we talk to people either side of us, but we don't get to around to the other people, so.
Very good. Any other announcements? Things we want to do? I want to do a quick prayer because my friend Gene Dawson suggested that occasionally we should say a prayer here in this class. And my wife did too. Yes. And even though we pray a lot during the service, quick prayer would be appropriate here. So I just want to say, Lord, please accept our thanks for all the blessings you give us. And we are thinking today about immigration and all of those folks, which includes all of us that have come to America or are born here, are immigrants or children of immigrants. And we ask you to please direct our country in the fair treatment of them. And we thank you for all your blessings. Amen. Amen. Okay. All right. Welcome, Christine.
Thank you. Well, I learned a lot in preparing for this lesson, so I hope I can impart some to you. When I taught immigration, I asked one question at the beginning, and I'm going to ask that question to you. How many of you are 100% Native American? I have Steve who has you have some Native American, but the rest of us are descendants of immigrants. We know that. So I want you to keep in mind that if you know where your immigrants came from and maybe when, we're going to look at some charts and you might be able to identify when they came. In preparation for this talk, I read this book by Zeke Hernandez. He is an immigrant from Uruguay who became a US citizen. And I recommend it if you're interested in immigration at all. He does a very good job of talking about the history and some of our legislation and what's happening today.
Christine, I forgot to mention that, wanted to tell them that your ancestry is Italian.
Right,
Your grandparents on both sides came from Italy,
yes,
and you have an Italian citizenship
I do.
as well as American.
right.
And that allows you to buy property in Italy and gives you an EU citizenship also.
Oh, wow.
That's correct,
Yeah.
yes, yes.
Doesn't
If I could afford to buy property. I
doesn't
would.
it also, doesn't it also entitle you to free college education in Italy?
I don't know, I guess if I'm a US, I'm
One of
a,
my students, his father was from Italy and he went to school in Italy because he said it was paid for.
oh, well, I'm past that, but I wish. I wish I could do that. I know that, I do get every year a little, booklet for voting. But it's all in Italian, so I'm learning Italian. I don't know enough about the candidates to vote, intelligently. So anyway, so Steve, okay, we'll go to,
Just gonna
The ne-
share screen so our Zoomers can see this also. Okay,
so let's start with the people who were originally here. That's the third one.
the third one?
Yeah.
Okay.
Imagine, if the Native Americans had any idea what would happen to them. Here, this Indian says, "Welcome to Plymouth. You're illegal and we'll need $5,000, a background check, and then you can get a 2-year guest visa." Another slide. Tell me more about this wall idea of yours. You know, from a perspective of Native American, we are all on stolen land. No perspective.
Yeah.
So before I go into immigrants, I want to at least address the involuntary immigrants, and that's immigrants with an E, who came to America from Africa. We took in about 389,000 Africans from from mainly Western Africa, of the 10 million that came to the New World. We think maybe we ended up with about 400,000 because some of them from Caribbean came into the New World. That was from 1501 to 1866. Here's just a graph of the chart to show you, most of them, most of the African slaves went south. We received about 389,000, and so they boosted our economy at the beginning and for 74 years of our nationhood. So what country today would not like to have 74 years of slave labor to boost their economy? Okay, I've given you a handout of the brief history of immigration legislation. And I emphasize the word brief because, and this is brief, as more I got into it, I kept on seeing all these different regulations, but there were some landmark pieces that I'm going to address. So I may be going through that pretty quickly. If you have any questions about it, you have this to use as your guide. Initially, the beginning of our nation, we defined citizenship for white free persons of good character. And you had to have 2 years residency and then later on 5 years residency. So that was the Naturalization Act of 1790. Then in 1798, we had the Alien Enemies Act, which was pretty strict. And it suppressed dissent, and it allowed the president to detain or deport citizens of a hostile nation. And it's been used 4 times in our history, 3 wars, War of 1812, World War I and World War II, and then President Trump just invoked it. Even though we're not at war, he claimed that we are at war with Tren de Alagra, the gang from Venezuela. So he has invoked that now. Aragua, yeah, wow. Okay, let's look at this chart here, and I want you to try to see where you came from. For those in the back, I'm going to try to share with you. Notice that the green is mainly Northern and Western Europe. How many came from Northern and Western Europe? Okay, your ancestors may have come during that time. But then look at the spike, about 1900 to 1920, you had the large yellow group, that is the Southern and Eastern Europe. How many people from Southern and Eastern Europe? Okay. And then we had a dip largely due to the restrictive Naturalization Act of 1924, but also there was the Depression, so a dip in immigration. But then look, after World War II, we had immigrants, but the composition, the country of origin really changed. Notice here now we have Latin America and Asian coming into our country. And we'll talk about that a little bit later, that change, why that happened, that we had this change from mainly European to now then Latin American and Asian and African.
What's the blue? I'm sorry, I can't.
The blue was Asia. I just want to mention, Asia is a huge geographic area. We're talking about South Asia, which is the Middle East, South Asia, India, Pakistan, Southeast Asia, Indonesia, East Asia, China, Japan, Korea. So it's a huge geographic area when you're looking at that blue, dealing with Asia, and a little bit of Africa in there too. Okay. So how many people of Irish descent do we have in Okay. Well, you were the first immigrant group to stoke fear among the current Americans, because Bailey, you were Catholic, and they thought that you might be more loyal to the Pope than to the Constitution. So you were discriminated against. I saw a sign that said, no blacks, no dog, no Irish. And also, no Irish need apply. So there was a lot of discrimination, and you were considered being poor, your ancestors rather, uneducated, hungry for work, and considered a threat to the native workers. So you were the first group, and you came in the 1820s, 1860, the 1840 was the famine. So that was when the wave of immigrants came and that represents some of that green area, I believe. Okay. Then on the west side of America, we had discrimination against the Chinese. The Chinese came to help us build the railroad on the western side from 1865 to 1869.
San Francisco.
That's right.
A lot of them came in to San Francisco. Yeah.
Right, and then they also worked as launders, did laundry, but they were workers. But then Americans did not want them here. They were too unlike America, and they were discriminated against, and they wanted to get them out, to the point that they even passed a law to exclude Chinese. They were considered filthy, immoral, and disease prone. So there are a lot of very colorful language that was used for our ancestors, almost everyone in the class, though they were essential laborers. But there was a 10-year ban on Chinese laborers, and they were denied the right of citizenship. So many of them left, and we still had some that staying in the San Francisco area. So that was another restrictive immigration law. Okay. Then the Germans. How many people of German descent do we have? Oh, wow, okay. Well, you were also discriminated against, your ancestors rather, because you had a different language. You were Protestant, your ancestors were Protestant, but Lutheran, and that was a little bit suspect, what is the Lutheran? So there was from 1850 to 1889, you followed kind of the Italians and the people from Southern and Eastern Europe, 1850 to 1890. And there was some anti-German sentiment, but then during World War I, there really was anti-German sentiment to the point that you were called, or your ancestors were called Huns and uncivilized brutes. And it got so bad that even they renamed sauerkraut as Liberty Cabbage. Then the Norwegians and Danes also came, and the Swedes. There were similar, how many Norwegians and Danes and Swedes from Northern Italy? Wow, what a colorful class we have. So your ancestors did not experience as intense discrimination as others. You were from Northern Europe, even though you had a different language, you were more accepted,
And you were white.
and you were white.
Yeah.
Yes.
Very wise.
He said very wide.
Lies, that's right, yeah.
Then how about Southern and Eastern Europeans? I asked for that hand before. How many of you Southern Eastern? A few, okay. You were right, we were maybe from 1890 to 1920. And there was discrimination against this group. Many of them were Catholic, and they threatened jobs. And Henry Cabot Lodge, the senator of Massachusetts, referred to these immigrants, including my own ancestors, as violent ultra-socialists, bankrupt embezzlers, swindlers who had lost all social and business footing, unskilled laborers of the lowest kind. So they were considered culturally and racially inferior. Then Mexicans on the west side, how many from Mexico or from Latin America? Any Mexicans in? I was surprised to learn of this. Remember, the Mexican War just ended in 1848, but there were mass lynchings of Mexicans from 1848 to 1928 in the Southwest. Yeah, I knew of African Americans being lynched.
Right.
I didn't realize that lynchings of Mexicans. And there was actually Juan Crow laws, just like the Jim Crow laws of the South. They had the Juan Crow laws, similar of desegregation, and relegation to second-class citizenship. So Mexicans had been coming in, but they were also discriminated against, along with then the people from the Caribbean, Central and South America. So you can see a pattern here. We've been through growing pains with immigration in our quest for a more perfect union.
So is any background at all race not discriminated against?
The white Europeans,
Yeah.
the white Northern and Western Europeans. That's, I think, as I looked at, that's almost the only group that was not a Protestant, white, and they were Protestant. That's why the Scandinavians were not really discriminated against. And that's what initially, in the 1790, what they wanted to eliminate to that. And then we've got a law that's coming up that kind of accentuates that.
Even the Lutherans?
Yeah, I know, they were the right kind of Protestant. And then African and Asian came, we'll talk about why they came. They also faced discrimination, largely because of roots of colonialism. A lot of these people who were from countries where Europeans had colonial rule, historically, and then, of course, racial prejudice. Anyone from Africa and Asian countries? We have, yes, hey. You were discriminated against. Okay. Well, I couldn't give a lesson on immigration without mentioning the Statue of Liberty that was given to us from France in 1886. In the tablet that she's holding on the left-hand side is inscribed July 4th, 1776 in Roman numerals. And of course, we know in the pedestal, which the Americans built, was Emma Lazarus' new poem, The New Colossus. And in that pedestal is her whole poem, but the most notable verse is this verse that I'm going to read to you. Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free. Well. And by the way, this was the first image that most of our ancestors saw as they came into New York Harbor. The Statue of Liberty silhouetted against the sky. Okay, here we have then a immigration law that was very strict and lasted for over 40 years. And it was a severe quota system that essentially favored Northern and Western Europeans, shut out severely limited Southern and Eastern Europeans, restricted Asians. And the quota system was and very strict as far as numbers as well. But essentially, this was kind of a xenophobic stage that we went through, that we said, we don't like any different people. We want just Western and Northern Europeans.
That was Calvin Coolidge, wasn't it?
Yes, Calvin Coolidge, when he signed that into law. So then, and that lasted through up into through about 1965. But in 1942, I mentioned the Alien Enemies Act of 1798. It was invoked by FDR. And we were at war with Italy, Germany, and Japan. And FDR invoked that, and in turn, over 110,000 Japanese citizens and immigrants. And I have another statistic that says it was as many as 120,000. And we we're just talking about an internment camp that we had in Colorado.
Amache.
But we also interned 11,000 Germans and 3,000 Italians. I didn't know that we had also interned
I
them.
know that. At that same camp,
And, no, at a camp,
not at Amachi.
I don't think so. I don't know for sure.
Yeah.
So that was kind of a dark time in our history when they had literally no warning. If they could sell their homes, fine, but then they had to leave everything and go into those camps for the duration of the war. Also in 1942, there was the initiation of the Bracero program, which is like meaning strong arms. Because we needed work, because a lot of our men were serving in the war, we brought in millions of Mexicans to help with labor, to work with on our farms and our railroads. And they were allowed illegally to come in to work, to be workers. And that Bracero program lasted until 1964. Unfortunately, that conveyor belt kind of kept on going. And after 1964, all of these Mexican immigrants immediately became illegal because they were no longer of legal status. That created a problem. Okay, let's go back to our chart now. And you can see here now, I have included this chart includes all of the blue is European. So from the 1660s up to 1920, 1930, we had mainly European immigrants. Then we had a downturn, largely because of, the Depression, but also because of this 1924 Restrictive Immigration Act. But after World War II, gradually, notice immigration increased, but look at the difference in the origin. Now we have, in this chart, the orange and the red are all Latin America, and the yellow is Asia. The green is Africa. Now, why was that dramatic change? In 1952, there was another immigration act that kept the quota system, but allowed Asians to come in. Remember, they had been restricted. Southern and Eastern Europeans were still restricted, but they could come in, but there was still the restrictions there, but it did allow some Asians. But it was not until 1965, and notice here on the chart, you can see after 1960 is when we had this sharp increase. Because in 1965, the Immigration and Nationality Act did away with the old quota system, did away with that 1924 restrictive act, and then allowed Asians, Latin Americans, Africans to come in. And so that is why now you have this change in the demographics of the immigration, that you can see many more from those countries that came in. I wanted to show you this chart only because it just illustrates that the percentage of our immigrants in America has stayed pretty steady, except for that downturn. Back in 1920, we had 13.4 immigrants of the US population. Then, because of that Restrictive Immigration Act of 1924, we dipped down, but then in 1965, we released that and allowed more immigrants, and we came back up to 13.7 in 2011. And I understand, according to the book here, it's 14%. The most recent figure I can find is we're about 15% now immigrants that live in the United States. So not that much difference in when we look at our history. Okay. So I talked about the two acts of 1952 and 1965. During President Reagan's term, two significant things happened with regard to immigration, two decisive actions. In 1986, the Immigration and Reform Control Act, known as the Simpson-Mazzoli Act, amnesty was granted to about 3 million undocumented immigrants. I've seen another figure that says 2.7 million, but about 3 million undocumented immigrants, while making it illegal for employers to knowingly hire undocumented workers. So that was kind of the compromise. But this is the first major, large amnesty. Now, just to say something about the employers, they can use an E-Verify system, but it is notoriously inaccurate. So they try to use the system, but our own government has a hard time keeping track of who's a citizen and who's not. And so they may try to do their best in determining whether someone is undocumented, but it doesn't work that well. And then the Civil Liberties Act of 1988 included a formal apology to the Japanese Americans who were interned in 1920 in World War II and granted reparation to the survivors, $20,000 for each survivor. Official apology from the US government. So that was a major thing. Ronald Reagan recognized, as most of our modern presidents did, the value of immigration. And in his farewell speech, his final speech as a president, he said some important things about immigration. And I'd like to read to you just one excerpt from his final speech of January 19th, 1989. He said, "We lead the world because, unique among nations, we draw our people, our strength from every country and every corner of the world. And by doing so, we continuously renew and enrich our nation. While other countries cling to the stale past, here in America, we breathe life into dreams. We create the future, and the world follows us into tomorrow. Thanks to each wave of new arrivals to this land of opportunity, we're a nation forever young, bursting with energy and new ideas, and always on the cutting edge, always leading the world to the next frontier. This quality is vital to our future as a nation. If we ever close the door to new Americans, our leadership in the world would soon be lost."
I wish the president would read that.
Yeah. And really, Presidents Clinton, Presidents Bush, and Presidents Obama all recognized the importance of immigration. In 1996, this just was another, there've been a lot of little attachments to these laws. In 1996, it just said that the immigration services are required to respond to requests from agencies who want to find out if a individual is a citizen, what status they are for the purposes of benefits and licenses. Then after there were others that, through the years, but the main change came after 9/11 with the Homeland Security Act of 2002. Totally reorganized immigration services. Did away with the Immigration and Naturalization Service, and then started the Department of Homeland Security. Within that Homeland Security, we have three major entities. We had the USCIS. That's the agency that I worked with when I got my Italian citizenship. That's the United Nations Citizenship and Immigration Services, dealing with immigration benefits. Then there's ICE, which we all know about now, Immigration and Customs Enforcement, which deals with internal enforcement. And then the CBP, which is the Customs and Border Protection for Border Security. I wanted to show you this chart, and I don't know if I included it for you, but this chart here is kind of the how we deal with visas, and this is really old. I think this goes back even to the Johnson era. We haven't, in many ways, we've changed our immigration pathways, but many of our pathways date back to the Johnson administration. So we really are woefully outdated. Here, though, I wanted to let you know that permanent immigration is the green card. That's ways in which you can come in. A lot of these new immigration laws emphasize family reunification and job skills. Like the immigration laws of 1965. But here set some standards. So you can come in through, if your immediate family become a citizen, family sponsored preferences, employment, diversity visa, it involves, maybe countries that don't normally send, uh, people to America like Israel or Uganda. And then there's the humanitarian, the refugees. This is a president can set that limit. And under President Biden, we took in 1,000 refugees. President Trump has suspended that program. So no refugees are coming in. However, he did allow 59 white Afrikaners from South Africa to come in. They might be hard to justify their refugee status because they, still in South Africa, they own 70% of the land and are 7% of the population. But nevertheless, they got some status.
They're white.
They're white. That's right. So I don't know if President Trump is going to allow any more refugees at this point. Then the bottom part, the temporary immigration, is where people who are come in for work visas. Notice we've heard of the H-1B, that's Elon Musk talked about that. That's bringing in skilled workers. The H-2A is the agricultural workers. So they have limits. But again, for our work needs, it is really woefully inadequate. But that bottom part, they're considered non-immigrants because they don't have a pathway to citizenship, but we have many different visa types that people can come in. Okay. So my author here made some comments about immigration. Here are some of the things he said. Just as a body of water with no inlet becomes a swamp, an economy without a healthy flow of outside ideas becomes less inventive and successful over time. There's an overwhelming evidence that immigrants play an outsized role in discovering, introducing, and disseminating novel ideas. Immigrants are 80% more likely to start firms than native-born individuals, and about 25% of new firms started in the US have at least one immigrant founder. And here's the interesting thing, that it seems that when native-born inventors and foreign-born inventors get together, that synergy really increases creativity. And there's many more patents when they come together. They bring the old ideas from their different cultures, and they're more creative than either of them would be alone. I wanted to have a comparison to show you how immigration has helped our economy. So I chose a country that generally historically has not encouraged immigration. Most of our industrialized nations are below the replacement rate fertility rate for population. Japan has had a very low birth rate, but they have a high longevity rate. But they've run into problems. This is their population pyramid. And the population pyramid just is a view of the population distribution, male and female within 4-year increments, 0 to 4, 5 to 9, and so forth. So I want you to see this. You can see they're shrinking with each year. There are fewer and fewer babies are being born. And this is from 2020, so I got it before this changed. But in that middle area, and I don't know if with your cursor, if you can circle the area from, let's say, 20 to 50. Can you do that with your cursor? Anyway, there you go. That area from 20 to say 50, that's the area of the work age population. And that has been shrinking. So you see, because there's so many older people in Japan, it puts tremendous pressure on this worker age population to sustain the country because that's shrinking. And so Japan realized this. So even after years of not accepting immigrants, they finally in 2019 decided that they had to implement something, and they implemented a selective visa program to bring in immigrants to help with that area that was really being stressed. Because if these workers are being stressed, they don't have time to have children, and it seems to be a self-defeating enterprise. So now they've accepted it, but it's caused some problems because the Japanese are not used to having different people come in. And so you've seen kind of right-wing groups emerge. Now, Americans population pyramid is quite different. We have a population of 134 million, so we are much larger than Japan. But look, we also have since 1971, with the exception of a few years, have always been below replacement level of 2.1. And yet, look, we are not shrinking our population necessarily. That is because of immigration. So all this time, our fertility rate is now 1.63, and we need 2.1 for replacement. But still, we take in 700,000 to 850,000 legal immigrants every year. And they come from all over the world, all different skill levels to really, and you have to be 18 to be a naturalized citizen. And so it just feeds into that very important area where we need the workforce. That's why, one of the reasons why we recovered much quicker from COVID than other of our European industrialized nations because of immigration. So naturalization, I mentioned, last year we took in 818,500 new naturalized citizens. And I gave you on your sheet there, on the back page, the requirements to be a naturalized citizen and the 100 questions that they need to study. So, let's look at the back and see the qualifications first, or the qualifications. And there are some good differences, but you have to have been a legal immigrant, in other words, have a green card for 5 years or 3 years if you're married to a US citizen. You have to demonstrate good moral character, pass a civics test, so you have to know all 100 questions, and you are to answer, they give you 10 questions and you are to answer 6 in order to pass. But you have to know all 100, except they allow 65 and over, and if you've been there for 20 years, you only have to know 20. But anyway, I gave those to you, and you can get the answers if you go to the USCIS website. But I encourage you to see if you can answer all 100, because the naturalized citizens have to answer all of these, or have to know one of these. And the rate of those who apply is pretty high, about 94%. So when you go through that process, they're really serious. They want to become US citizens. You have to pass some kind of a English proficiency exam and read out loud 1 English sentence out of 3, and to write 1 English sentence out of 3. And of course, take an allegiance to the United States and be at least 18 years of age. But when you look at the number of legal citizens that we take in every year, you can see why we have become vibrant, why immigration and many of the European nations are aging. We're aging, but we are staying, as President Reagan said, we're bursting with energy. Also, you can fast track if you enter the military. We have 45,000 immigrants that are in the military now, legal. You have to be of legal status. But if you, after 1 year, you can apply for citizenship, or immediately if there's hostility. So many those immigrants who want to become immigrants fast track, they will join the military. So that, as far as I know, that's still in place. Okay, you've heard from politicians that they're bringing in all of the criminals, and they're emptying out the mental institutions, and all these bad people are coming in to the United States. That's just not accurate. I want to show you some of the immigrants who have contributed to our country. Here are some people. Sergey Brin, co-founder of Google, immigrated from Russia. Katerina Fake, co-founder of Flickr, daughter of a Filipino immigrant. Pierre Omidyar, founder of eBay, son of Iranian immigrants. Jerry Yang, co-founder of Yahoo, immigrant from Taiwan. Louis Von An, Guatemalan, born computer scientist, co-founded the language learning app Duolingo, which I'm using right now to try to learn Italian. Also known for co-inventing CAPTCHA, the security test that distinguishes humans from bots. You know, that little box that you check,
Yeah.
you can thank Louis Von Ahn for that.
That thing is so frustrating. I hate that.
Blame Louis, you know.
Blame that guy.
And then Eric Yuan, interesting story with Eric. Grew up in China. He applied for the visa 8 times and was rejected. But he didn't give up. On the 9th try, he got in. He got a job with WebEx, but they would not listen to his suggestions. So he went out on his own and started Zoom. Now he has a office, a company of 2,700 people. But interesting story, when he was in China as a freshman in college, he had a girlfriend and he rode in a train for 10 hours to see his girlfriend. And on that train, he began thinking, there's gotta be an easier way that I can see my girlfriend without going 10 hours at a train. So he kept that in his mind and he came here. And so when you Zoom with your friends and your family members, be thankful that Eric didn't quit trying to get in after the 8th try. He said.
Sure.
There's Ilya Stutzkever, born in Russia, raised in Israel, educated in Canada, co-founder of OpenAI, company behind ChatGPT, and also Microsoft AI partner. So between 2014 and 2018, nearly 1,800 people graduated from top US universities with PhDs in AI. 53% were immigrants.
Wow.
Now, in the decade, remember that restrictive act that we had in those 30, 40 years, patents declined by 68%. So that tells you that we lost out. And according to one estimate, we lost out on 1,165 Southern and Eastern European scientists who would have arrived in that 30-year period. Who knows what they would have invented and what things we could benefited from them. Other companies that began as immigrant founding startups, Budweiser, AT&T, Kraft, Colgate, and Pfizer. And nearly half of the Fortune 500 companies in 2025 were founded by immigrants or their children.
Say that again, Christine. Half?
Nearly half of Fortune 500 companies in 2025 were founded by immigrants or their children.
Wow.
Wow.
Now, I just mentioned technology, but think of all the contributions immigrants have done and I just started in naming things: literature, film, medicine, music, art, science, inventions, all the restaurants we go to. So it's not only in technology, but immigrants have, as our previous presidents have said, have brought new life and vigor into our society. But throughout history, we have often given mixed messages. We have keep out, we got to build a wall, but yet the employers are saying, we need you, we need you. So it's been a quandary for us, and this is why we've kind of resulted in many immigrants that are undocumented here. Okay, so a couple of questions. Do immigrants take away jobs from native-born citizens? The National Academies of Sciences, Engineering, Medicine say no. They did they commissioned a group of experts, maybe initially some, but basically they said that they do not take away the jobs of natives. But imagine some of the job descriptions of some of these workers here. A farm worker, opportunity to work outdoors in 100-degree heat, low wages, long hours, no benefits, dangerous working conditions apply here. Many of these owners have said, we've tried to get native workers, but they don't even last a week. And so they're saying, we do need these workers. They're desperate for work, and they pick our lettuce, our peaches, or they work in our meatpacking plants. So we need them. Do immigrants commit more crimes? I was not able to find statistics of nationwide necessarily, but I found some by state. This was Minnesota. The blue represents native-born. This was incarceration rates from 1980 to 2010, and the red represents immigrants. The other chart is from Texas. They had violent crimes, property crimes, drug violations. The blue was native born. The red is legal immigrant. The green was undocumented. Only one area, traffic violations, were the legal immigrants higher than the native born. And then I have just a chart here that shows that immigrant prison rates have gone down over the years. The red is the immigrant, the blue is the native born.
We're too doggone tired to.
Now, this is an important thing I want to end with, this is, I think, what's driving this current anti-immigrant concern. The fear that white non-Hispanics are going to get replaced. This is a racial makeup, and I say race is really a social construct. It is not a genetic or a biological one, but for the purposes, I'll use that. The red, this is 2010, not white non-Hispanic, 63%, Hispanic 64%, Asian Black, African-American 12%, and Asian 4.8, basically. But the change in 2022 was shrinking. The white non-Hispanic was shrinking because the birth rate of whites and actually of African Americans is much lower than the birth rate of Hispanics and Asian. And so they are growing faster. So the white non-Hispanic has shrunk to 58%. Hispanic grew to 19%. The African Americans stayed pretty steady at 12%. Asian grew to 6.1%. But here's the projection, and it may be sooner than this, for 1945. This is what people are worried about. We're going to be replaced.
2045.
I'm sorry, did I say 20?
You said 19.
Oh, yeah, well, 2045, and maybe as early as 2030, but 2045, white non-Hispanic will dip below 50%. So then there will no longer have a majority of ethnic group. But the pie is going to be shifting. Hispanics are going to grow to 24%. African Americans are going to stay there about 13%, didn't grow that much. Asian has grown to 7.9%, and then others. So it is this, they call the great replacement theory, we're going to be replaced. And this is what is driving, and maybe driving why there's the emphasis on anti-Hispanic, because the Hispanic group is growing, but the Asian group is growing as well. But they are considered non-white, even though, as I said, race is the social construct. And that's the fear, dealing with that. Yeah. And you can see, any questions on that there? Okay, and finally, my last slide. This is a statue that was unveiled in July 3rd of this year, one day before our July 4th celebration. This is on a wall, on a huge building, unveiled in Roubaix, France, by Dutch artist Judith, and I didn't get all her name, de Leeuw, is entitled Statue of Liberty, Silent Protest, as to what's happening to our immigration today. So I just want to close with this comment. I've lived in New York City, Chicago, and in small and large towns in Indiana. And I'm really amazed at how well we do get along, even as diverse as we are. But throughout our histories, we can see we've always had internal factors that have tried to separate us and accentuate due to racial, cultural, or political reasons, have tried to divide us. And then we've had outside, our adversaries have always tried to divide us because they know that a united America is a very formidable America. So they have tried to drive a wedge through us. And now with social media, they can employ thousands of bots to impersonate as American citizens and act and create dissension to divide us. And let's face it, our current administration is not very enthusiastic about diversity. And so it's going to be up to us. Yeah. We the people, not the people described necessarily in the preamble to the Constitution, but we the people of the entire Constitution with all 27 amendments. That's all of us. We need to decide, we need to determine what kind of country we're gonna live in. So I know you probably have some comments or questions. That's,
Good.
yes,
We've got about 10 minutes left. There are microphones in the back by Linda and by Steve. If you want to talk, please get a microphone and that'll help. Pass it over to Nora Lee. There we go.
I'm interested to know if you believe in the opinion that our media makes more money by dividing us and causing all this friction and, dissension among us, and that it's good for business.
I agree. I mean, I'm just my personal opinion because of ratings. You know, and this is why many of these people are popular on podcasts. I think it's very true. You get people angry, get people fearful, and you get clicks. Okay, and that's the same way with that. It's unfortunate that they accentuate the divisions when, in fact, rather than saying something positive, like I mentioned before, but they always the division. Absolutely.
There was a story a few years ago about a farmer in Arizona who had a crop that had 2 days to be picked. And so he advertised $50 an hour for people to come and harvest. 2 people applied, 1 showed up, and he quit after 1 hour.
That's an example why we need more workers.
That's weird.
Go ahead, Cory.
Just to add to Nora Lee's question, the news media has from forever been entertainment. Because that's the only way we can make money, get viewership and be relevant, and that's sad, but that's how it is, so.
Yeah.
Is there any way to counter that? How do we counter that? Because we are bombarded with this news to say
That's a whole hour discussion.
Critical thinkers.
huh?
We educate children to be critical thinkers.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Eric, go ahead.
You wanna give me the mic? or-
Yeah.
Uh-oh.
You have a question here?
Okay.
Or comment?
Let Eric had his hand up first, then we'll come back to you. Okay.
Yes, I did.
Is it on?
Closer,
It's on.
closer.
Is it on?
Oh,
I
yeah, yeah.
think so.
Yeah.
I have an anecdotal comment. I was in Creed, Colorado, having just the night before watched one of those Creed repertory theater presentations. And I stayed in the old Creed Hotel and my waiter was from Jamaica. I went across the street the next day to have a sandwich at like a Firehouse Subs or something. And the waiters and waitresses, they were from Eastern Europe. So I pulled the manager aside and I said, why are all these people coming from Eastern Europe to work in the Creed Hotel or this sandwich shop and then in the Creed Hotel? He said, well, I'll tell you, this is July 20th, 2012. And he said, because they work. He says, if I try to hire American kids, college age students, he says, they come in with all these restrictions. Well, I can't work on Friday. I can't work on the weekends. I can't. And he says, these people from Eastern Europe, they come and they work. He says, that's why we hire. So they're here on work visas.
Would you repeat again where we can find the answer to those 100 questions?
In fact, I have a copy for you.
Yes, Steve.
You can see on the back here, the USCIS, United States Citizenship and Immigration Services, go to their website. And type in citizenship test.
Yeah.
And you'll get all the answers. And I do encourage you to answer this. The naturalized citizens are probably more educated about our country than many of, I know many of our students.
High school?
I know that. As a matter of fact, I, in my immigration, when I did that, my lesson, I selected some questions of my students to see if they could pass. Now, they had not had government yet, so I could understand, but very few of them did, pass the naturalization. But even if you ask a lot of adults, these questions. Yeah.
Christine, thank you. The immigrants from the past, the immigrants of the present. I'd be interested in your thoughts. Since this is a worldwide phenomenon, is certainly happening throughout the entire world. Europe, we have good friends in Sweden, that we talked with this summer. But Sweden is a very benevolent country and has taken in many immigrants. The question is, what is the tipping point? Your thoughts on this? Acculturation and assimilation, the problems that they're having in Europe, not dissimilar to issues that we're having here at USA. The anger and the dissatisfaction about prejudice that immigrants feel, the dissension, etc. and so forth. When do we need to think in terms of limiting immigration as far as the ecosystem and infrastructure of one's country, if you believe that certain values and traditions need to be preserved? But it's hard. It's hard when people are not assimilated into that culture, or at least have an opportunity.
That's a very good question, and that's our problem. We cannot take everybody who may want to come to America. But we are living with an antiquated system, and neither the Democrats or Republicans have been able to come up with a solution. You know, I think maybe with the intelligence of this class, we could probably come up with some research with a policy and hand it to them. But no, and for Europeans too, who are not used to immigration like we are, at what point? I just will say that was the criticism of all of the immigrants that have since assimilated. Teddy Roosevelt felt that the Germans and the Italians couldn't assimilate. We felt the Chinese could not assimilate. You know, that was our reason why we didn't like them, and yet they've assimilated. But you know, in Europe, they're experiencing this now more recently, and so they're going through that natural. They're so different from us. They have a different. How could they possibly assimilate? And there will be this time when it's going to be difficult. On the other hand, every country has to recognize how many people can we take in, because we can't let a whole country that's at war come in. I don't know if anyone has some suggestions, but we have to, as Americans, the American government has to decide too, what, you know, do we have some limits and to come in? And that's going to be, that's why it's so difficult. But good point.
I just wanted to make a little comment about the assimilation. I have read studies where, you know, an immigrant and their family, they're not immigrants doing manual labor forever. They have shown that the family histories, someone coming to this country who doesn't have a real grasp on the language yet, they don't have a lot of resources, maybe they're fleeing places where they've been very disadvantaged. They come in as laborers. They will labor for others. Their children, though, are instilled with this idea still that America has opportunities. And they show that the next generation are business owners. They start small businesses and then they employ lots of other people. And then the third generation, they go into more of the professions. They now have the resources to become lawyers and doctors and scientists and professors. And so there's this forward thinking in immigration that I think we're losing sight of. That, yeah, someone who comes in and, you know, picks crops, that's not their final hope. And so I think there's a lot to be learned from that grit and that overcoming. You know, and I don't want to say a lot of native borns can't do that, but there is this extra something that says we're gonna make it.
Yeah.
That's very true. In fact, that was the main point of this author of this book. That second and third generation was far more productive as they grew. And then just another point, a lot of the border states initially are burdened with new immigrants because of, you know, Arizona, Texas, understandably. But looking down the road, like you're saying, it ends up being a benefit to them. Initially, it's a problem, but each successive generation ends up being more productive.
We're out of time. Last couple of comments. Somebody over here had a quick comment, anybody? Sharon, go ahead.
Very much for your.
Oh, yes.
I thought it was very positive.
Sharon, okay. Jim, last comment.
The thing that I think is so often missing in discussions like this is that, we are basically, or at least the United States, is basically a religious country, and a lot of our tenets are based on religion and not just Christianity, but with Islam and things like that. And one of the primary tenets of both Christianity and Islam is that we are to welcome the stranger, and that people that do not welcome the stranger are really violating the core values of that religion. And I never heard that brought up in any of the discussions, right or wrong, about immigration.
That's true, unfortunately.
Good point. Thank you, Christine. Great discussion. Thanks, everybody, for coming. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
Did MLK say this?
What?
Martin Luther King of character as opposed to color scheme?
Character.